luckily we were able to avoid most of that.
Jason joins us, and I don't know how to move this around, so for everybody watching on YouTube, Jason is not Kevin Huerter. Kevin is not Jason, so just don't look at the little lower thirds. Jason, we were just talking about Kevin getting on the plane. He's feeling better. And one last thing before I get to Jason here, but I'm trying to get the timing here. Is your mom and family still out here? Did you get a little bit of home cooking while you were sick? Did you get taken care of, or they already left?
I did. It was honestly as I was getting sick. We came from Utah, and that was when I started to feel a little under the weather, and loaded up on emergency and had some home cooking, and for the most part laid low, stayed in the house. And then they left right before the Houston games, and that was really kind of where things for me turned a corner. But it was great. They were here a couple weeks ago. It was great to see them, and I was obviously able to get some home cooked meals.
Always better when your family's around when you're sick, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, we're older men now, but at the end of the day, you just kind of want to lay in bed and let someone take care of you. So the timing of it worked out.
Yeah, honestly, I'm older than you, and my mom and dad, knock on wood, are still around. When I get sick, I got a wife, but there's nothing like mom's home cooking. They know all the tricks. They've been taking care of you since day one. Now, you also, since we last talked, because you were under the weather, you were on, I want to say, with Bobby Marks, and we listened to it. It was a blast of an interview, and I was kind of ashamed of myself that I hadn't brought up some of the history that you were realizing about Kings Lakers. You went online, you went down, it sounds like a little bit of a rabbit hole that you play them last night. So it sounds like you've got a little bit of an understanding and a beginning education as to why these Kings fans are so scarred when it comes to LA.
Yeah, it was Zach Lowe. So on his podcast.
Zach Lowe, sorry.
Yeah. And it was after our last home game when the Lakers came in and they beat us. I was trying to understand why there's so much bad blood. And it's obviously you share the same state. I'm sure the history goes back, and there's been a lot of different games and a lot of good battles. But for me, I was just trying to understand the history. And so I did. I literally had YouTube some different things and tried to learn a little about some series we've had in the past, or some of the matchups and some of the beef, whether it was between players or coaches or team. But I admitted, my Kings history, I don't know much about the Kings history before I got here. So it's kind of been a crash course for me, trying to learn as I go. And for that, obviously you can feel there's a heightened sensitivity every time we play the Lakers, and more so than probably any other team in the league. And so for us to kind of already be done with our season series with them, playing them 4 times, this year able to come away 3-1 against them. But you could tell our fans, those games, they mean a little bit more, and I'm trying to understand why.
Well, and obviously that was a long time ago, that playoff series that brought a lot out of these longtime Kings fans. But I'm guessing you guys are on this come up. It's a new thing. You guys are playing so well, and hopefully you guys do get into the postseason. If that happens, it feels like something new might develop. If it's Minnesota, Utah, who knows, Clippers, whoever knows that if that's the case. But thinking about that, Kevin, did you have a rivalry like that you felt like that in Atlanta? I'm not sure if the Hawks did for you.
Yeah, we did. Ours was the Knicks. I think all those rivalries are the bad blood. It starts and ends in the playoffs. So I think that hopefully for us, we're going to find some new foes in a playoff round. You play a team sometimes 7 times in a row. You start to get to know each other a lot. The elbow in this game turns into a shoulder in that game, turns into a harder screen. Like everything just seems to compound, and that's where you truly build those rivalries. So when I was in Atlanta, we had our New York series in New York. It was physical. There was a lot of trash talk. And so that kind of built it even into my last year there. You could tell that those games, when we went back to the Garden and when they came down to Atlanta, there was a little extra in those games. I think there's a little bit more motivation on either side, but it'll be fun. Obviously, hopefully we make it to the playoffs when we create our own rivals with this team.
It's the Kevin Huerter Show, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Again, if you're just joining us, never mind the nameplates up top. That's fine. That is still Kevin. That's still Jason. When you were watching all that stuff, please tell me you saw your assistant coach, Doug Christie, clocking Rick Fox in the chin. Did you see that?
Yeah, that one I'd seen before. So I'd seen before. I already knew about Doug and his beef. That was actually one of the first things I joked about when I got to Sac. It was like our second or third practice, and I think Doug was getting emotional or starting to yell about something and joking around. I was like, "Hey, Doug, watch my chin, man. Watch my chin." You could tell he started to laugh, and I think was maybe surprised that I knew about it. But Doug's been great. Doug's a funny guy.
He's great.
You know, Dave and I were talking about this. Obviously, it's not the playoffs, but you just had that weird little with Houston. And the first game, Garrison Matthews has a pretty hard foul. I mean, it's a foul on Keegan. But then the next game, seemingly kind of an innocent little thing with Malik Monk. And then boom, it didn't escalate into a fight, but it could have. And is that kind of what you're talking about? Like now stakes are higher in the playoffs. And now you see a guy that, hey, I remember in game 2 when I got that elbow to the midsection. Is that kind of are you more prone to these kind of things if you play these teams in kind of back-to-back fashion?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely guys that develop a reputation in the league. And yeah, that game 1, again, I didn't play in either game, so I don't know. There's some nuances of the game, some things that you miss, obviously, when you're not on the court. But yeah, there's certain players that are known to do different things over the course of a game. And I mean, that second game, that was a whole lot of nothing. I mean, I know Malik got bumped. He hit the ball out of his hand, which I think was a fair response to what happened. And then there was a blow up that I didn't think really needed to happen. But yeah, I mean, that sometimes happens. That not just in our series. I think there's been other series across the NBA where we had these little 2 games in a row. And the second game, there's a scuffle. I think it just happened there was one with Brooklyn and San Antonio. I saw guys got into it. I think another one with Denver. But yeah, I mean, you play a team on back-to-back nights, guys are going to remember little things that might have happened the night before or the game before. It's not as, hey, we play you now and we play you again in 25 games. A lot of times cooler heads prevail when that happens, but you're playing a team multiple times, and there's in our league where obviously you're competing, trying to win every night, there's going to be things that happen, and guys lose their cool for a second. But our game in Houston, I didn't think that was much of anything.
Was there, just on a quick follow-up to that, was there anything? It was a weird play with Russ the other day where he was stuck. You got him stuck, and he threw the ball right off your chest. I'm not saying you were going to go, but just that was a weird play. What happened there?
Yeah, no, that was weird. So I was closing out to him, and I was going to make him hit a 3. I don't think he'd made one up to that point in the game. So I think Russ's scouting report is make him beat you from the outside. So I really didn't give him much of a closeout. But I could tell as I was closing out, like he wasn't really looking at the rim. Like he was kind of looking at me to see how I was going to be closing out. And as he was going into his shot, it was almost like he didn't want to shoot it. And I contested late, started to bring my hands up, and he just, I think, got caught in midair and threw it off my chest. And he got the ball back. It wasn't like a street ball move where trying to throw it off your face or throw it off your forehead or something like that. So it bounced right back to him and continued to play defense. But that was, for me, it was almost like I also didn't really know what happened. Like it had gone up, he threw it off, and before I knew it, like the ball was already back in his hands, and it was just like, okay, I don't know if that was a travel, double dribble, whatever. Like I guess I'm playing defense again.
Kevin Huerter Show brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Let's talk about that. We've talked about your offense quite a bit, and obviously you're an assassin from the outside. You've made your way to the key as well quite a few times. We talked a lot about your offense, but that defense last night, I thought you were fantastic. I thought the team as a whole, especially in the second and third quarters, really locked it down. But you really seemed, I don't want to say overly engaged, Kevin, because I don't want to make it seem like you're not otherwise, but there was something extra there for you locking these guys down. Is that LeBron factor, Laker factor? You were just on that night, or were we just seeing something different?
I think it's a little bit of everything. That was our 4th time playing that team. I think the way we lost in game 3 was a tough pill to swallow, just how they lived in our paint. They controlled the paint. They had driving lanes, and we let them beat us with their strengths. We know that a lot of their personnel are guys who are elite at getting to the rim and have been doing over the course of their career, and that's how they beat us. And I think anytime you play against LeBron, there's a heightened, you're ready for it. I think great players bring that out in other teams. So there's always that when you play against him. But I think for us, it was just kind of locked in and knowing what they wanted to do, knowing what their personnel really wanted to do, what they wanted to get to. And then 5 guys just kind of being on a string and moving together and working together. And we had, I think it was a stat, I think they had 26 points in the paint in the first quarter, and then they had 24 for the rest of the game. So it's been an emphasis for us. We've talked about it really over the course of the last week, as our defense started to turn and go the other way, was we got to find a way to protect our paint a lot better and force teams to beat us from the 3-point line. And until they do, then we might have to adjust our defense again. But especially against this Laker team that really lives in the paint, tries to get to the rim, I think it was on everybody else, including myself, to make sure that we're in our shifts and helping each other out and trying to force them to kick the ball the outside.
Individually, your offense, as Dave was talking about, I mean, you've been a great 3-point shooter, but I'm curious about your when you get in the paint, you've got a pretty creative repertoire, up and unders. You're some slippery moves in there. Have you won a lot of games of horse over your lifetime?
Of course.
Bet you have.
To like shoot all those little random backyard shots. Those are things you just practice like before.
Pissing off your sisters in horse.
Oh yeah.
When you got towards the end of the game, and Coach Brown talked about this, you're starting to hear more and more. You heard it in San Antonio, and you really heard it in LA. You're hearing Light the Beam chants. And we started this conversation talking about that rivalry. I want you to understand that for Kings fans to win 3 of 4 against the Lakers and to hear not just like 10 people, but it sounded like the whole arena chanting Light the Beam down there. That's like inject that right into our veins. You're aware of that, I assume, on the floor? You hear that?
Oh yeah. No, it's hard not to hear it. I think there was because they did it in the Clipper game, and the Clippers had like their whole team out. And I think that was a game like we were supposed to go in there and win. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the crowd wasn't great. So you heard the Light the Beam chants in LA. And I think after that game, I saw on Twitter, and people were like, all right, well, come in and do that against the Lakers. Like, we'll see how that goes. And it was the end of the game. Finally, I think Rashawn hit his 2 free throws, and Trey came in and iced it, that you started to hear it. And, their crowd couldn't drown us out. So I think, like you talked about, it's been a long time coming. I think Kings fans are ready to kind of stick it back to the rest of the NBA, and they're showing out for us right now for sure.
One other thing I was thinking about yesterday, I think you said it in the post game on the radio, how difficult it was to find out that Sabonis was basically a late scratch. You were at shoot around thinking you've got him, and you guys do things completely different when he's not on the floor. So one, the way Rashawn was able to play, and how much of a challenge was it for the rest of you to kind of keep it going while running things differently than when you have Sabonis?
Yeah, we didn't know. I mean, Sabonis, the day before was fine. There was a little bug that kind of hit our team the night before and that morning. And unfortunately, Domas was one of the guys that it hit. And so we were expecting him to play. And he'd even told some of us players that morning, like, I'll be good, I'll be ready. And I think we still heard like he was still getting sick in the afternoon. So he was a late scratch. And him and Rashawn are such different players. I think a lot of times at Domas, we let him make plays. He catches the ball at the elbow. He's coming into handoffs, and guys are moving and cutting off him. And Rashawn is such a great rim threat. He's a pick and roll, get him the ball as he's moving downhill, throw it up to the rim. He can go up and get it. And so the play styles are definitely a little bit different. And I think Mike was talking about, he watched film with Rashawn earlier in the day. We ran some different things offensively. We actually put in a couple different plays over the course of the game to try to highlight, Harrison at the high post and trying to go at different matchups. And I think Fox was able to get downhill and into the paint just with us setting ball screens now. And Rich went 7 of 7 from the field. He was huge. So it all looked a little bit different. But I think for us too, that's a big area of growth for us. It's showing we can go and win that type of game without Domas, and showing the versatility that our team has, and being able to trust different guys and run different things, and still get really good looks. We put up, I think it was 116 last night, and I was out in the Houston games. We put up 140 in both those games. So our team offensively seems we can get it done most nights, and I thought just last night defensively we were really good.
Kevin Huerter Show right here on Sactown Sports, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Last thing I got for you, man, put it on a plane like an IG model. That was nice.
I said to Mark afterwards, because he texted me about it, because I think he was a little bit curious what my response was going to be. He was like, hey, like, how do you like this? Is this cool? I was like, Mark, like I've never heard something like that in my life. Like, what do you mean? Am I cool? That's hilarious. So I think I don't know where he comes up with this stuff. I don't know if it's something like comedians, they're writing material, late at night or as things come to him, or if that literally like he was just watching the game, like boom, a thought came to his head. But I thought it was funny. It made for a good clip, something that went viral real fast. So obviously it was a play that highlighted something I did. So I'm cool with it.
I think in a scene repeated in many households or on many phones, I had my dad call me and say, what is an IG? What does he mean? Is that a play? I think there were anyone over 45 It happened.
They said my brother was at work, I think the next day. So him and my dad worked together. And he's like, dad came into the office and he went right to my room. And I could tell, like, he had his phone in his hand, like he was texting someone. He's like, hey, like, I know it's like a good thing, but what does that even mean? And like my brother explained the whole thing. You could tell, like, as he's like, oh, right. And he's like walking out the room, texting it to all his buddies. So I'm like, damn well, like my dad and all his friends had no idea what any part of that meant. And now they think it's like the funniest thing in the world.
My boy's putting people on IG models on planes.
Like trying to be hip.
Oh man. Well, listen, we're glad you're feeling better. We're glad you got a little bit of home cooking, even though you're away from home. And what a week. Big game, Oklahoma City tonight. A lot of youngsters. They're on a 4-game win streak. In fact, we figured it out. I think, Jason, the next 3 teams, Memphis, Oklahoma City, and Philly, are on a combined 18-game win streak.
Yeah, something like that.
You guys are on a 5-game win streak, so everyone's gunning for you, and you're answering the bell so far. We'll all be in front of our TVs and tuned into our radios tonight for the game.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys as always. Definitely a good stretch for us coming up. Got a lot of good teams, so hopefully keep this going.
That's Kevin Huerter on the Kevin Huerter Show, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. We will be right back.